Hi everyone, this is just going to be a very quick demo to show you kind of the process I want you to go through with these schematic design alternatives and how you can apply them in the 3D environment. So this one's about SketchUp. I'll also do one for Rhino and Lumion. Okay, so this is the model that you've been provided. It's got the 2D version here, which is up above, and the 3D version down here with the terrain and all the topo involved there. You've also got some basic apartment building, townhouses, roads. In this case, I'm going to be mapping an image that would be basically what you sketch up, whether you do it by hand or in Photoshop. And then I'm not going to, so the roads will be on there. I've kept it really simple for this demo, but I'll be placing the apartment units on there. So for starters, the first thing we want to do is map that image onto this 2D version. So this is actually on the schematic 1 layer. I think this has 3 layers, so you come up with 3 different schematic designs. It's a group, so I'm going to open that up, go to File, Import. And what I've done in Photoshop is actually just prepare a really quick sketch diagram. Again, it's not complete, but just to give you an idea how this works. So I want to map this on this surface. I'm going to click and just map it. It's tiling. You can see that. That's fine. It makes it easier if you can see the entire site. So don't make it bigger than you need. I'm going to right click, texture, position. And normally when you come up, you'll get these fixed pins. So if you want to stretch it, you can use green. Excuse me, distort it, you can use yellow. What I want to do is uncheck the fixed pins. In this case, since I know this is exactly the right proportion, I'm going to click, let go of the mouse button, place that there, click this, let go, place that right at the edge. That thick property line is visible, but it's thicker than the original line, so I'm going to put it kind of in the center of that if you think about the AutoCAD drawing. And this one, I'm going to place, the property line in this case goes across here, but we include we're going to stretch the site out to the right of way, so that's what the geometry has. Okay, so I've got only 4 pins. I've tried to distribute them kind of across the site. I can't hit every corner, but these are major ones. So once I have that, you can see that this corner corresponds to that corner. This one corresponds to this corner. This one corresponds to this corner. And this one corresponds to that corner. So I'm just going to drag those, click and hold the button down, and drag that out there, drag that to there. Doesn't look so great so far, but just keep pulling. Snap that one to there, and snap that one to there. Whoops, missed that a little bit, right? There's the geometry. So now it snaps right into place. Sorry, I missed that one there too. Pull that up a little bit. Every time you push the wheel mouse in to rotate the view, orbit the view, it gets rid of the tiling. It makes it easy to see. So you can see that now fits just perfectly in there. Now you could scale this out. It is in proportion, but this is a really quick way to make it line up. So I'm just going to right click, choose done. Now what I need to do next, I can locate buildings on here. It's really easiest in this case in SketchUp and in Rhino, as you'll see, to work on the 2D version. So I will do that in a second, but what I want to do is select this, not the edges, just the surface. Right click, choose texture and projected. That makes this a projected texture. So when I get my paint bucket, hold the Alt key down, select that, close that group. This is also a group, so I'm going to right click, edit group, click, and it should map that right on there. So now I have the same texture mapped across the topo. You can see the slope and the landform there. And you know, it's not super high resolution, but this gives you a really quick way to experiment and test your schematic design and see whether it works. So in order to arrange the buildings, I have the roads, and if you look carefully, there's kind of sidewalks in there. So I'm going to start up here just because this is flat, right? It's a planar surface. It's easy to place the buildings. So I will select this and this. Going to do a move, tap the control key, and it'll pull a copy off. I'm just going to drop these out here so I can work with them. Okay, let's just say for argument's sake, I'm going to tap the escape key, get rid of the both. I'm going to move this, put some townhouses around around the edge here. So again, move tool, snapping to this corner, tap the control key, move this down a bit, hover over top. I can rotate that kind of around the corner. Maybe I want a little more. I need to move it back a bit. Tap the control key again, move another copy off, slide to the top, rotate that around. So I'm just getting those basically arranged the way I would want them. Let's do this one. Tap the control key and do a 180 on that. There you go. Maybe I want to push that back off the sidewalk a bit. And since that's over on that side now, I'll just tap the control key. I'm kind of looking at this corner here, and then I'll rotate that. So without, getting into a lot of really tedious effort. Okay, that one I kind of moved down into landform. I didn't want to do that. So let's move that down there. This one, if you're using the move tool, you just hit escape. Let's move that up a bit, and let's pull that over to the surface here. There we go. It's better. This one starting to get there, but it's not quite rotated. Okay, and right now I'm not worrying about exact elevations in there. So you can see I'm starting to get kind of a streetscape view going. See the roadway, the sidewalks, and you can start evaluating the cross section that you have there. If you want it closer, farther away, maybe this one needs to move a little closer there. Maybe this one needs to move a little closer. Maybe it needs to rotate around a bit. All right, but the idea of this is it gives you a really quick way to kind of evaluate what's happening. And let's maybe move one more here. Anytime you're using the move tool, right now this elevation doesn't look quite right, so I can move it up. But we're going to put them down the train eventually, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to take this, tap the control key, move another one to here, and then rotate that around. And back that up a little bit. Okay, so let's say that's my basic configuration for the townhouses. And then let's do the same thing with the apartment building. So this one I'm going to move over kind of here. I had the idea that in this case, and again, this isn't necessarily exquisite design. Didn't want to give away all my trade secrets. So let's just drop that one there. Tap the control key, put this one here. And then maybe I'll select both of those and choose move. Tap that, pull over those over there. So now I'm starting to get this cluster of apartments with parking behind over here. All right, so I've just placed a bunch of units in there pretty quickly, but this is the two-dimensional version. So what I really want to do is get these down on the terrain model. So I'm just going to select across the tops, make sure I just have those. Right-click, choose the Drop GC plugin. And if it doesn't work, you can grab that one, try it again, Drop GC. There we go. Now I'm going to, just to make things a little easier to work with, I'm going to get rid of that version, property, not that one. Let's see, what layer is that on? Site 2D, there we go. All right, so I'm going to zoom back down here now, and I've basically dropped these units down onto the terrain model. Now you can see that some of those are kind of, they're floating or they're buried, and you see my roadway is kind of going up to a high point here. So I want to think about doing some grading here, and you can see they do step up the hill, but they're not really level in there. So what I want to do next is actually, I'm going to select this, double click on it. Now I can select the surface so I know I'm in that group, and I'm going to turn on the hidden geometry. And once I have the hidden geometry on, I can see where these buildings fit on that, and I'm going to use the artisan tools. So to start with, I am going to choose the select brush. And I'm just going to come in here, and even though the building's there, it's not in this group, so I'm not going to select it. And maybe I'll come out here. All right, so I'm just picking those, and then I'm going to use an option called Make Planar. In this case, I'm going to choose XY, which is horizontal, and you can see that that just created a level surface. Now there's some slope around it, and actually the elevation of that looks pretty good as it is right there. So I'm not going to do anything with that right now. I'm going to zoom out, go back to my select tool, tap on the escape key to get rid of that selection, and we'll come in here and select this next batch of edges. And maybe I don't. Now this is a case where I probably would subdivide this a little bit. So because I can't, I'm going to hold the shift key down and deselect these, reselect maybe those. All right, so I'll select those. And I can do the same thing. I can come in here and choose Make Planar, XY. And you can see now it's created that slope between there, but it's also created this big drop on the roadway. So before I get rid of that selection, I'm just going to use SketchUp's normal move tool. Click on that, tap the up arrow, and I'm going to say, okay, I want that to be a little bit lower than that last elevation, but not quite as low as it's showing right now. So I'm going to move that up just a little bit. Once I do that, tap here, just jumped out of there. Now I'm going to take this unit and I'm going to move it up in the air. Stop, right click, drop GC, and it drops it right down that platform. So now you can see how these townhouses are starting to step down that slope, right? And on the back side, you can see, well, it's creating this big mound here, but we can adjust that in a little bit. So let's do one more, and then I'll talk about how to modify the rest of the streetscape. So I'm going to go back to my select tool, double click, go back into here. And of course, as you're doing this, you realize if you have a tighter grid, you can adjust the distances or the slopes between the buildings. This is pretty coarse, but for schematics, we're just trying to get a rough idea of how this would work. So I'm going to come back in here. Select these. Again, you can go under the buildings to make sure you're kind of getting that selected as well. Even if you can't see it, just go back and forth a few times. All right, and let's do Make Planar, XY. Okay. All right, again, now you can see this is maybe a little low. We'll hit Move, bring that up a little bit. So it's a little lower than the last group, but not completely lower. And that looks pretty good. Get out of the group, select this, move it up, right click, drop GC, puts it right down on that platform. So again, you can start seeing how this is going to be working up. And now on the back side here, it's kind of looking a little coarse, but you can see, and now because there's not much distance and refinement here, you can see that I kind of have a little bit of an issue there because when I pull this platform down, it stretched this. So if I come in here now, I could go readjust those, or you could just assume that, okay, in this case, maybe, I don't know if this townhouse has a bottom on it, but if it does, okay, we get the push-pull, pull that down, and then I have a little bit of exposed foundation in there. Okay, so you can start understanding how this grading is going to work. And then you can come around the back here and say, all right, well, that looks a little coarse, but if I open that up, now I can use my artisan sculpt tool. And let's just right click and choose smooth. So I come around here and just smooth this off, pull this up a bit, blend that in, maybe push that down a little bit so it's not so distinct. I want the water to drain away from the building. Now this is starting to look a little more like a, nicely sculpted landscape that makes a nice smooth transition to the existing landform. And I can also go into the roadway and say, all right, well, let's right click and do sculpt. Maybe I'll adjust the influence a bit. I'm going to pull this up in here, smooth this out a little bit. Just look at the roadway, how that kind of comes down between the units. Maybe here I need to go down a little bit. So you're basically doing sculptural grading. You're just looking at this and making visual judgments. We can go back and look at the contours later, but it actually gives you a pretty nice way to quickly adjust that. Then I can go back to sculpt, adjust this up. Sorry, I want to go back to smooth and smooth this off. There you go. So now this road is starting to look like it kind of fits in between those townhouses. I'm going to get out of that group and turn off the hidden geometry. And we can start seeing how this is going to look, what the proportionate spaces are between there. And I could do the same thing with the other units. I won't demonstrate that, but you get the idea. This is kind of rough. This is now kind of smoothed out just from that tool. Next thing, then, we might want to add some basic planting areas in there. And since this is a group, we can use scatter for that. So in this case, I'm just going to pull up the scatter library, go down to the trees, say I want to use proxies, load those in. And instead of choosing a host first, I am going to come down here and choose clipping areas and set this on include. So now I can come back down in here. Let's make my brush a little bit bigger, more like 30. Okay, that's a pretty good size. And I can say, okay, well, maybe I'm going to include plants or trees around here that kind of create a barrier. I'm going to include some of those over here. Just essentially painting on maybe over here that creates an enclosure around these houses. Here. And I haven't put in the units over here, but let's just say, okay, that's where I want those basic vegetation masses to be. And now I can come up here and I can choose a host, which is that. And now it just filled that in, but that's because I need to come down here and say, don't use a surface area, use the areas that I just painted. So now you can see everywhere where I painted, I've got those trees placed in there. And if I want to adjust, right now I can adjust the size, the rotation, randomization of that. Anyway, for this, that works pretty well. So I can come in there and you can start seeing that I'm just starting to evaluate how that works with the landform and the vegetation. If I use V-Ray, I can come in here and really quickly render a V-Ray shot that gives me an idea what that's going to look like. And then if I want some individual, let's say our street trees, we want to come in here and add some street trees. We can use scatter for that as well. Load the same library, trees, proxies. Then instead of placing it, we're going to use pick points. So now I can come in here and just say, okay, I want a street tree here, here, here. And if I had a line, I could actually use a line to do that. But again, since this is an image, a bitmap here, I don't really have the geometry, and that's okay. I'm just going to come in here and place these wherever I want. And you can also notice in this case, they're kind of coming in random sizes, and probably for street trees, you might not want it that varied. So in this case, I will go down and say, I want these about the same. So 100, 100, regenerate. So now it's kind of placing those street trees in there. So again, if I want to kind of get my view, choose little position view, stand on the road, look through here, do a quick V-Ray rendering. Now I can start really getting a feeling for what does my streetscape look like, what about the spacing, the right-of-way width, the cross-section, do I think this is too big a space? I could start adding things in here. You can see here I haven't regraded this side, so it's kind of floating off the ground. But it gives you a really quick way to go in and not just kind of configure your concept for where your buildings are going to go, where your open space is, basic planting masses. It gives you a really quick way to visualize that. And I'll put together a more detailed tutorial that shows you how that works. But I just wanted you to understand how basically the Artisan works. That's giving you a really quick way to adjust landform, to put level building pads, and how you can place trees really quickly with scatter, and whether you're using scatter trees or lobwork trees, that's kind of up to you. But it gives you a really quick way to go in and create a really usable visualization of your design that includes all the three-dimensional information, just the grading, and then if you wanted to go in later, you could actually generate contours from that and see what that looks like. So that's the process I want you to go through. As I said, this is the kind of the SketchUp version, and I will prepare one for Rhino and Lumion as well. Thank you.